cold, damp housing, as we've heard, seriously affects children's health, and instability of tenure means that for low-income children and low-income families, often their school and their education is broken because they have to move because of the rent's gone up or the landlord wants to realise the capital gain. In 60 seconds or less, tell us what you're going to do about that.
The Green Party, over the next 10 years, would build 100,000 state houses. I need to point out there's also been major cuts in the last 9 years in housing, and we would restore that funding. Now, of those 100,000 houses, 10,000 would be eligible for something called progressive ownership, which would enable low-income people to be subsidized by the government. So in other words, the government would partly own their house, and as they paid off the loan, then they would own the house themselves. We also support the warrant of fitness that Grant was talking about before to ensure all houses are insulated and well ventilated. And we would also offer a program whereby people could defer payments on their student loans in order to cover a deposit on a new home.
We have plenty of money. This is a pet topic of mine because I'm an economist and it really irks me. We have plenty of money in New Zealand, and we could house everyone in beautiful accommodation if we wanted to, but we are addicted to speculating on the value of land. And for some reason, that's where all our money goes. In fact, more than where just our money goes, we borrow tons of it from overseas to speculate on it too. It is absolutely crazy. We need to close the tax loopholes on housing, particularly hitting land bankers so that they have an incentive to actually develop their property. And if we implement the policy that we're talking about, the Opportunities Policy, the Opportunities Party, we think we can restore over time housing affordability within around about a decade. It does take that amount of time because we can't crash the housing market. It would cause an economic meltdown. The final point, while we're waiting for that to happen, we need stronger regulation of tenancies and a rental warrant of fitness for sure.
We want to build 100,000 affordable homes. We want to crack down on the speculators, but I want to address the question in two very specific ways. The first of those is that we have to make sure that we set in place the structures for Housing New Zealand to be a real social housing agency. And it's been turned into a landlord by the current government. So we're going to drag it back. It's actually going to be a government department. It's actually going to have a mandate to look after the people who live there. And it's actually going to build more state houses, not sell them, which is what Housing New Zealand has been doing for the last 9 years. We cannot solve our problem with social housing unless we do that. So that's point one. Point two is around renting, and I think it's a really important topic, and I'm really glad it's been raised because we don't talk about it enough. Half New Zealanders live in rental properties, and we have such inadequate laws around renting. We'll be making a policy announcement about this soon, so I'll tell you what I think about it, and you can see if that matches up with the policy announcement. And the thing that I really want to, and I knew the bell would go, the one thing I really want to mention is the fact that you can be kicked out with a 90-day notice is actually an appalling situation. Many other countries in the world would never ever allow that, and neither should we.
So Stuart set out our policy really well. There's two things I would add. The first is that the home insulation scheme that the Green Party built in 2008, and that we got agreement with Labour to implement fully. It was a $1 billion program to insulate 1 million homes in New Zealand. We did get National to agree, but they only did a third of it, and they have now completely cut it. But that program needs to be reinstated because we still have around 600,000 homes in this country that are so poorly insulated they cause our families sickness. And we can stop that with a great scheme that involved central government, local government, banks, community organisations. I mean, it was a fantastic collaborative scheme, if you remember, when it was running fully. So we will bring that back. And yes, rent is right. So we have proposed getting rid of the 90-day notices, absolutely. Requiring landlords to write into their tenancy agreements how they intend, the calculation they intend to use to put up the rents. so that at least tenants can know what kind of rent increases to expect, and to restrict rent increases to no more than once every 12 months. There is more we need to do to reform the tenancy law in this country to give that security of tenure to families so that renting is just as good for those families as owning is. Kia ora.
Thanks, Patricia.
So ACT would review and reform the RMA, which would then bring house prices down because it would take the government out of all the regulations. So we could buy more land to build more houses, and the houses would then therefore become affordable. There's no point building affordable homes when supply and demand aren't meeting up. We need to build more houses, prices will come down, and then rent prices will come down at the same time.
Could you explain how?
Firstly,
Houses.
I don't think the private sector will address the housing issue because for them it's about profit. We have 42,000 people living in homelessness in this country. We have children who tonight will be sleeping in cars. To address that, first and foremost, we need to build more houses, and Labour will do that. We'll build 100,000 affordable homes. We need warm, dry and healthy homes, because what that does is it ensures that our children are warm, dry and healthy. What that does is it has a positive impact on that child's health, reduces the cost on the health system and ensures that those children are at school and are at learning.
Thank you. For all the candidates, I've got a question about what's affordable. When I was a school teacher many years ago, in 1979, I earned, with my degree, $13,000 a year, and the median house price was $26,000. And that's the house that we bought. It was 2 years of my teacher's salary. The median house price in New Plymouth is $370,000. And if you've been teaching for 12 years, your salary will be $78,000. So that's about 4.8 years of your entire teacher's salary to buy a house. Now, the Demographia Survey, the International Demographia Survey, says that anything above 4 times the median house price, anything above 4 times your salary to the median house price is seriously unaffordable. So yes, we've got to build more homes, and yes, we're going to build more houses, but how are people going to pay for them?
What about Auckland, Bryan? About 10?
11.4 years for a teacher to get a median price house in Auckland. Yeah.
I would like to talk about another Green Party policy to basically reduce speculation, property speculation, which is what is driving up our housing costs, and that's the capital gains tax. New Zealand is one of the only countries, industrialized countries, that doesn't have a capital gains tax. And the premier purpose of this tax is not to raise income, but is to discourage people from turning over houses as rapidly as they can in order to realize the windfall profit. And what the capital gains tax does is that it reduces that incentive. The other part of our policy is that we would reduce the ability of foreign buyers to come here that are people who are not New Zealand citizens, not residents, and drive up property prices by purchasing property.
When it gets to you, Material, I wonder if you could address the gap between wages and buying a house, because you can't buy it if you haven't got the money.
You ask Material or anything?
No, it's another green part. Sorry.
No, you do. He's asking you. But I'll answer it if you want. Because I think the housing stuff we've all kind of talked about a little bit. Like it's a package of things to make sure that we do build more houses, that they are affordable. It's why the state has to be involved, because we will build them at a cheaper cost. And that's why the state, like our policy is, those affordable homes are only for first home buyers. But the other half of the equation is what I want to talk about, and that's wages. Because the reality is that as well as house prices spiralling out of control, wages have been staying flat.
Yeah.
And we've got to lift wages. Generally, we can do that directly in the government in terms of lifting the minimum wage and getting a living wage in place. But we also have to do it by strengthening the ability for unions and workers to collectively negotiate. If you want to see the graph where inequality starts going off like a rocket in New Zealand, it's 1991 when the Employment Contracts Act came in. That's what happened. And until we actually get a proper right to collectively bargain, and we've put in place these things we're calling fair pay agreements, which are industry-wide agreements which will stop people being picked off. That's the stuff we need to do to lift wages as well as the housing bit, because it is an equation, a ratio with two parts to it.
We'll go back to you in a minute, Jeff.
Can I just
Haven't
add?
forgotten.
Yes, all of that, and yes, and so we've proposed raising the minimum wage to $17.75 an hour in the first year, and then it will be over to 60% of the average wage, and it will stay that way from 2020, so over $20 an hour from 2020. But we also need to make sure we've got products that people can use, different pathways they can use to move from renting into home ownership. And with the progressive ownership program that we have that Stuart talked about is a no mortgage, no deposit. So you're living in the house, it's a state house, you have an agreement to pay a little bit more to the state than your rent. You don't need to have a deposit to do that, and you don't need to get a mortgage, so you're not in debt, because one of the problems for low-income families is that they can't afford to save for a deposit, and two, because their rents are so high, and two, they can't afford to get into a mortgage, into debt, because there's no way that they've got any financial security in the medium term. So this product would mean there's no mortgage, no debt, deposit, and then they would be able to pay that house off. But if their financial circumstances decline because of income insecurity, which we know drives people out, like it drives transients, right? It means people are continually moving from house to house because their incomes are so uncertain. Then they can move back down to just paying their rent. And that way they can stay in the house. So the idea is that family has a place to live. It's a home for life. They can stay in that house and they can manage their finances to be able to purchase it as they need to, and then to pull back and pay rent if that's what they need to do. But they are secure in their home, and that has to be a priority.
Yeah, thank you. I'd ask people to try to keep to the bell. I know it's
Do
hard.
you know who pays for this? We all pay for this. So those who are struggling, those who are on an income where you're struggling, you are then going to pay again in your tax. So you're paying more and more. But you might want to pay for them, but what about everybody else who are struggling to earn their income, who have to pay tax and have to pay at the certain amount of tax that these parties want you to pay that you actually can't afford? It might be fine for you guys who are earning a normal amount. What about everybody else? What about the ones who you're thinking about who are actually going to benefit from these houses? What about them?
Are we really?
They're not going to be able to pay for it anyway, though, are they?
No.
Jeff.
Capital gains taxes haven't controlled house prices anywhere in the world. That's the sad truth. If you look at a lot of the European countries that have stable house prices, that have economies that invest in businesses that really create jobs and grow incomes, they tax all assets. And that's what the Opportunities Party is proposing. We tax all assets and we give that money back to people in lower income taxes. So that will keep house prices stable. It'll give people an incentive to invest in building new houses because they're getting taxed if they got land sitting bare. And it'll put people, it'll give people a reason to put money into businesses rather than all of us speculating on housing. It's an absolutely crazy economic model to think we can get rich off buying houses off each other.
Right, we have one question from the floor. Time for one question from the floor.
Just so you know, there will be open questions a bit later on, but there was a question around this week in the media. We heard that emergency housing special needs grants in Taranaki more than doubled in the first quarter of 2017. What is your commitment to Taranaki's most vulnerable families in terms of housing?
And we'll start this end.
We need to build more houses. And I know about that press release because I was involved in writing it. I mean, plain and simple, we need to build more housing because this is actually about investing in people. This is about investing in families, and this is about investing in community. And what you'll know if you're all local, what you'll know is that we have a community that has been marginalised, and there's been no investment in it for way too long. So we need to invest in people, we need to invest in community, because by doing that we empower people, and what that does is creates change.
I think you know how I feel. I feel we need to build more houses too, but I believe we need developers as well as government to be building more houses, because developers can do it at a much faster rate than the government, and they've proven it.
Matilda.
It doesn't quite work like that, because government doesn't actually build the house. The builders build the houses anyway. So, you know, like it's... sorry, I shouldn't be so dismissive. My point is that a house building program is a collaborative one where you have government that is responsible for the planning and for funding a considerable amount of the social housing and state housing that is needed, and then works with private developers where that makes sense, iwi organisations, community organisations, Habitat for Humanity, all of the groups, local councils who need to have a much stronger focus on providing housing for their communities too, and that way you get a broad approach from across the whole sector in building the housing that you need. I don't know the exact situation here in Taranaki and how many of your state houses have been sold off. I don't know if that's
another 100 in the next 5 years.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, here, like everywhere, there is this continual erosion of the housing stock, both in its quality and in its availability. So we need that collaboration across all of those agencies to solve it. And there are people, they are waiting there for government leadership to say, yes, we will facilitate that relationship, we'll facilitate that work. We've got a putia of money to help get it started. Let's all work together to make it happen.
Thanks, Matilda. Bryan.
Yeah, so the question specifically around the growth in emergency housing grants, and Bill English was saying last week he couldn't understand why everyone was complaining about how much money they'd spent on emergency housing. Because you caused the problem and now you're trying to take credit for spending money on it. I guess the point that I want to make is that we have to have emergency housing. We have to have somewhere for people to stay. But that's not the solution. The solution is a housing first approach that says we will put you in long-term, stable, secure housing. We're not going to shift you from motel to motel. We're actually going to find a place that you can call home. That's the solution to this. And that's why, yes, we'll have to budget, and we are budgeting for more emergency housing places, but much more importantly than that is building these state-led building programs that give us homes that people can live in for life.
It's pretty clear. It doesn't, matter whether it's the public or private sector that's building houses generally, but when it comes to social housing, there is a massive deficit that has built up, and the government clearly does have a role there. Actually, what the Opportunities Party favours is using harnessing much more of a community housing led approach. This has been incredibly successful overseas in Australia and the United Kingdom, where local communities take over ownership of the housing stock in their area, and we don't get these massive swings in how the housing stock is managed as you get right-wing governments and left-wing governments going in and out. You get a lot more stability, and you get a lot better service actually if it's led by local communities. So we really want to boost the community housing sector.
Good. Thank you very much.
There are two issues that are uppermost in my mind when it comes to emergency housing. The first is the plight of homeless women in New Plymouth, there is no homeless shelter for women here. There's a woman at the Women's Center over near the YMCA who helps women. She sees about 12 women every day who have no place to stay, and she finds a family to take their kids in, and the woman will walk the street the whole night. I think that needs to be addressed immediately, but I don't see our current government doing that. The second thing is that there are state houses standing empty in Marfell, and that makes no sense to me at all. And we don't even need to build them; they're there, and they just need to be rehabbed.
Thank you. That's sobering. You've got 12 women a night who have no place to average.